Good morning. My name is Susan Alexander, and I am the pastoral associate for this morning's service. Many people have had a part in bringing us the service today. I'd like to thank the people in the booth this morning. In the sound booth today, we have Todd McMealy, Alex Stuckey, Lee McMealy, Caroline Petty, welcoming people on Zoom, Vincensky on camera. Our music director is Chris Taggett. Our minister is the Reverend Matthew Funk Crary. I'd also like the greeters and all the people who provide snacks for us following the service, and also for Stacy, our religious education director. There's just really too many people to thank. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody is around to hear it, does it make a sound? This question was first posited by George Berkeley, a metaphysicist who lived from 1685 to 1753. One answer to the question is, yeah. Even without the presence of an animal, human or otherwise, the tree falling produces vibrations in the air. But the question is not just one of physics, but also of philosophy. According to the Urban Dictionary, the tree falling in the forest is a metaphor that symbolizes the ineffectiveness of unheard opinions or thoughts. I think the metaphor emphasizes how life's experiences become more meaningful, expansive, and understood when processed with others. Sharing with others who we are and what we're experiencing can provide a sense of validation and affirmation. Through our connection with others, we can receive valuable insights, perspectives, or reassurances that can help us navigate life's joys and challenges. But getting back to trees, research indicates that trees are connected. Trees share nutrients, communicate, and care for each other. When a tree falls in the forest, the other trees know. So it is with us. We are connected to each other as well. We are all part of an interconnected web. Joy and woe are woven fine, a clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. It is right, it should be so. We are made for joy and woe. And when this we rightly know, through the world we safely go. And that's by William Blake.
Our gathering song this morning is 410, Surprised by Joy, as we are surprised about the baton passing that we are now doing. I'd like to invite everyone to stand as they're willing and able and join your voices together. The words will be on the screens.
Surprised by joy, no song can tell, no thought can compass. Here we stand to celebrate eternal love, to reach for one another's hand. Beyond all other gifts is this gift alone to mortals given, the love of parent, lover, friend, attunes our hearts to bliss of heaven. Faith, hope, and love here come alive, life's deepest treasure peaceably to all as one.
From Inciting Joy by Ross Gay. But what happens if joy is not separate from pain? What if joy and pain are fundamentally tangled up in one another? Or even more to the point, what if joy is not only entangled with pain or suffering or sorrow, but it also what emerges from how we care for one another through those things? What if joy, instead of a refuge or relief from heartbreak, is the efflorescence from us as we seek to help each other carry our heartbreaks? Which is to say, what if joy needs sorrow? What if Zadie Smith in her essay is correct as she calls the intolerable of existence? Now, if it sounds like I'm advocating for sorrow, nope. Besides, sorrow, unlike joy, apparently doesn't need an advocate. Given as, to quote the visionary blind man Pozo from Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot, we are born astride a grave, i.e., we and everyone and everything we love will one day, maybe today, die. So I think sorrow is going to do just fine. Gwendolyn Brooks says about death, one of sorrow's chauffeurs, it's, quote, just down the street, our most obliging neighbor you can meet at any moment. Or as the Jackson Five sing, not in the voice of sorrow, but kind of, I'll be there. You and I must make a pact, we must bring salvation back. Where there is love, I'll be there. My personal thanks to Ross Gay and all those he names for their insight and their wisdom. I invite you now to a time of contemplation, of considering and pondering our ritual of joy and sorrow. This is one of our Unitarian Universalist rituals, the speaking and the congregational holding of our joys and sorrows together. Among our many congregations, I've witnessed it practiced in very different ways, each as unique as the beautiful web of people who makes up that faith community. In years past, rituals have invited individuals to name their joy or their sorrow that they are currently experiencing, either by taking the mic in person or by writing it down for a worship leader to later read. And the congregation just listens. The pandemic, of course, has changed quite a bit about our lives, and the ritual is of no exception. As we've added Zoom participation to our services, as we've taken to sanitizing mics when we have many speakers, we've adapted this ritual accordingly. Now, in the past, and some of you might recall this, there were folks who chose to make announcements or to make complaints during the ritual, but they were missing the point. Our joy and sorrows ritual is a moment in the life of our faith community to hold one person at our center, to listen, to hear what is touching their hearts. Despite our adaptations, this has not changed. Today, we will re-engage this ritual here at MVUU following the necessary adaptations, but also how it's been practiced in the past. Holding our ritual first in song, we will begin inviting those online to speak first. And then I will bring a mic to anyone who is more comfortable remaining in their seat for the ritual. Finally, we will form a line along this west wall, and one by one come forward to individually be held by our community. Now, all of our joys and sorrows will be edited out of our recording of this service that we upload on YouTube. This is one adaptation to hold our community safe and our individuals' lives secure. This ritual, like any ritual that you enter into willingly, it can shift you. It can move you from where you are to a new place when it is over. Think of that. In 40 minutes' time, you could be in a different place. In 40 minutes, you're going to be a little bit older. I'm just closing this because I can hear quite a bit of our children's program. Perhaps you'll just be 40 minutes wiser. But more significantly, you could be 40 minutes more connected through the sharing of joy and sorrow. This ritual is a moment, it is your moment to be open, vulnerable even, speaking, listening, trusting, that as a community we will respond in compassion and in care, and this is holy work. The naming of our heart's delight and our heartbreaks. The moments of shared happiness and the lonely, broken places that we find ourselves. Where we know pain, where we know struggle, where we know hurt, and yet we are held in the loving spirit of the Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist congregation. This is holy work. So let us prepare to hold one another once again in joy and in sorrow. We begin with when our heart is in a holy place, verses 1 and 2. Please remain seated. If you're participating this morning on Zoom and have something you'd like to share, turn on your camera and unmute yourself, please. In a sentence or two, tell us about your joy or your sorrow, and when you are done, I'll drop a few stones into our communal water in just a moment. First, these words. As we travel through life's journey, we experience many emotions, both joys that may be enhanced by our sharing and sorrows that may be lessened through the support of this congregation. I will add the water that we have collected through our water communion as a symbol of our continuing support for each other. And more, as a reminder that each and all are welcome here to speak and be heard in our covenant of care. I'm going to add 2 stones, one for joy and another for sorrow. And we overflow. There's so much that has been spoken among us, and yet there also remains the unspoken. And so let those 2 stones symbolize those feelings, thoughts, experiences, the depth of our days that is here among us and yet is still silent. Behold all of this as well. In words and in silence, our hearts have spoken. They have been heard. We have listened as a community, and now may we be moved to act in celebration and in compassion as a community of faith. Please remain seated as we sing When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, verses 2 and 3.
With love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words. Then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place,
coming back to that insight and wisdom from Ross Gay. What if joy and pain are fundamentally tangled up with one another? Or even more to the point, what if joy is not only tangled up with pain or suffering or sorrow, but it also is what emerges from how we care for each other through these very things? And so we've witnessed that. We've seen it. We've felt it. This entanglement of joy with sorrow and sorrow with joy. For health after illness, or illness that yearns for health. For safety after danger, or fear of losing it. Love after being alone, or the loneliness, longing for love. Wholeness bound up with brokenness, brokenness, waiting for wholeness. Not in competition, or keeping score over one or the other, or casting votes for some winner, but woven together into the threads of our lives and here, spoken into the tapestry of our congregation. A tapestry of vulnerability. Because this is what joy and sorrow are. They are vulnerabilities. The openings into our lives, our hearts, our souls. And so much in our life tells us to remain closed. Brené Brown, the social scientist and wise woman, believes that joy is the most vulnerable of emotions. To love someone fiercely, she says, to believe in something with your whole heart, to celebrate a fleeting moment in time, to fully engage in life that doesn't come with guarantees. These are risks that involve vulnerability and often pain. And yet, she concludes, I am learning that recognizing and leaning into the discomfort of vulnerability teaches us how to live with more joy, more gratitude, more grace. Bringing our vulnerabilities into this faith community, it offers us an opportunity for a response that deepens joy, gratitude, and grace among us, that strengthens our belonging to one another. As your pastor, I've listened and I've heard, but I'm only part of the response. Our pastoral care team, Sally and Joel, Michelle, Silvana, and Tom, they have listened and they have heard, but they are only a part of the response. It's the members and the friends, and yes, the guests of this congregation. You are part of the response as well, of that deeper sense of belonging. And it can be uncomfortable. In fact, I'm willing to guess that it will be uncomfortable for us to travel together this way. The discomfort of sharing vulnerabilities in a world that tells you not to do that. And then there's the response, the reaction to having heard another person's heartbreak and heart's delight. That can be uncomfortable as well. But it's no more uncomfortable than us living isolated and alone. See, here at Mountain Vista, we have chosen to travel a path together in covenant, which is what the people of this congregation have written to guide us along our way. And it reads, with love as our guide, we covenant to welcome the stranger, Encourage and support one another, honor our diversity, ask questions with an open heart and mind, listen deeply and seek understanding. Speak directly and compassionately when we have differences, and trust one another and remain in community while our differences are resolved. You see, when we respond to the vulnerabilities with our personal celebration and concern, it's that middle part that will guide us in love to ask questions with an open mind and heart, to listen deeply and to seek understanding. And it's as simple as this. How are you? How are you? You can join me if you want. How are you? And I know our society today makes this a routine, a rote question. But what if instead, how are you was a ritual of people in a loving covenant inquiring after vulnerability? How are you? Because I've listened and I want to celebrate with you. How are you? Because I have heard you and I am concerned. How are you? I care for you. Of course, it's a voluntary ritual, and the response can simply be, I'm fine, thank you for asking, and that's all right. But if the answer is more, it's an invitation to go deeper together, and the person takes it up, then that ritual of how are you can move you both to deeper grace and gratitude and joy. Reverend Erica Hewitt, a colleague and friend of mine, understands that when we are so bold to fulfill this ritual, it's more than just our emotional bonds, our communal wholeness, which is achieved, that we begin to heal our world. She writes, Hannah Ardent, who was a political theorist and not a theologian, writes in her work, The Origins of Totalitarianism. Totalitarianism is organized loneliness. Think of that for a second. Totalitarianism is organized loneliness. And that the seed of loneliness is isolation. The experience of not belonging to the world at all, which is among the most radical and desperate experiences of human beings. Therefore, Reverend Erica reasons, resisting the isolation that breeds loneliness is not just emotional or psychological or communal or even a spiritual act, but it's also a political one. The ritual, then, of asking, how are you, when it is engaged voluntarily with love seeking deeper meaning, becomes a blessing for two. And it becomes political resistance to the fascist trends which live among us today. Trends that tell you you must go it alone, that your pain should be hidden, that your joy makes you vulnerable. Of course, this only separates us and empowers those who rely on our isolation. How are you? How are you? How are you? That's how we go forward together, engaging that entanglement of vulnerability with love and compassion and care in direct response to what we share, what has been offered here, what has remained silent among us. It's how each and all of us gets to name who we are. It's how each and all of us learn from one another to be free. May this liberation be ours as we choose it to be, acting together now and in all of our days to come. Amen. Our closing song is Come, Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and lift your voices together.
Come, thou fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy praise. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection fills our hearts with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful. May we still goodness prove. Come, thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of wars fall silent, the love glow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun. Come, thou fount of inspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us find ourselves in prison, and help our hands tell of our love. With thine aid, O fount of justice, earth be fair as heaven above.
When you leave the sanctuary today, on your left, there will be two bowls for offering. One is a woven basket that goes to our partners, the Interfaith Community Services. Interfaith Community Services, ICS, has existed since 1985 and has been helping people in need to achieve stable, healthy, and independent lives. And we have some, here we go. Pride Fest 2023 is coming up September 29th through October 1st. Save the dates. Dungeons and Dragons for young adults. Contact Reverend Matthew to RSVP. Learn Tarot with Alice Bath. MBUU will be hosting an intro session September 17th from 1 to 2:30, and again in October. There are 7 altars throughout our building, and there's actually a new bike altar outside, so see if you can find them all. This is by Khalil Gibran on joy and sorrow. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be?
The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives?
When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you now joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight.
Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy.